This is now our third consecutive meeting where the board has a topic to discuss a potential bond at some point in 2024. At our last board meeting on September 7th, it was requested that we put together a timeline of what it might look like if it was even possible to have the ballot measure go before the community in March. And so that's what you see tonight. If we work our way backward, from a March election, we have to declare our intent to place the ballot measure by December 8th. And so our first board meeting in December is December 7th. That's the last date for you to make a decision. And so what we would really be doing over the next 2.5 to 3 months would be meeting with various stakeholders, meeting with our labor partners, community stakeholders, to seek input, to seek feedback on the development of a potential plan. But again, the ultimate decision rests with the board and would be made in early December in conjunction with the work that Perkins Eastman's doing with the master plan this fall as well. The most important thing I think right now, again, is really that we're in this information gathering stage as we try to deliberate on whether or not it is most advisable to bring forward a bond in March. I think you heard some really eloquent comments this evening from our community about why November might make more sense, and frankly, they might be right. And so for us to actually know the answer, though, really the next stage is to hire a bond advisor. You actually have it on the agenda for later this evening, ISM Advisors. We'll conduct a survey of potential voters in Burbank over the next week if the contract's approved, and they'd be prepared to actually present to the board on our October 5th meeting. So the next meeting that we have, they can let us know the results. And the types of questions they'll be asking are general questions of support for various initiatives of the district, support for leadership of the district, but also gauging their potential interest in a facility bond at various tax rates, and whether or not March or November is a better timeline. And so that is absolutely part of what they will be helping us understand. Certainly if the results were that we only have a 30% favorability for a potential March measure, that really would kill it. That would tell us that we don't have the ability to put together a successful campaign to bridge such a large gap. If what we hear from them is that we already have a 70% general favorability rating for March, and that would help inform information gathering for you to help make a decision. So again, the first key step to keep the door open for consideration for a March ballot measure is to approve the contract later this evening for ISM Advisors. They will be calling approximately 4,000 residents. They have about a 10% success rate on having people actually take their survey, and so the actual survey results will be from a minimum of 400 potential voters, and so that would be what they would help us to again identify the current sentiment of our community for general favorability of a bond. It was mentioned earlier this evening accurately that the 2013 bond was conveyed to the community as being at a $55 per 100,000 of assessed value tax rate. We actually, as a district, have been very focused on keeping our rates below that threshold, including we actually just did a refinance of some of our bonds in 2020 that saved us just under $4 million. And so as a result, our current tax rate for the community is actually about $50. So we have consistently been, ever since we sought community support in 2013, we have been very focused in our stewardship of the public dollars to keep that tax rate well below what was actually approved. So one of the things that the advisors will be doing in the survey is gauging community support for maintaining that $55 level that was communicated and was supported back in 2013. If the community did support that, it would yield approximately $450 million, about $500 million for facility improvements to our district. It'll also look at keeping the rate the same as our current $50 rate, so again, actually reducing what the community has already supported, and that would yield about $370 million if we kept it at the $50 rate. So those are the types of questions that the advisors are able to help us, not just kind of take a stab in the dark or to conjecture, but actually to get informed information about where the community stands currently, to help us know what a potential ballot measure might look like, at what level, and again, how we would go about building the campaign and coalition. So in response to a question that was asked also during public comment, is a legitimate and legal expenditure for the board to pay for this out of our general fund, Fund 1, and so it is, again, it's a customary, legal, and legitimate practice to do so. With that, again, you can see kind of we've laid out a general timeline of what would be taking place after the October 5th board meeting if the board decides to continue to explore the feasibility of a March measure. At no point are you closing off the ability to do this in November instead, but again, to keep open your options, it really requires us to keep marching forward on this timeline. With that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I do. Would you like to go first?
Can I?
Yes.
Great.
By all means.
Thank you for putting this timeline together so quickly. I know it was a very quick turnaround on a request that I don't know that you were expecting. So can you talk a little bit about, one, are we surveying likely March voters or likely voters in general? And then also, are we asking them about this kind of calculus between November and March, or would we need to go out and do another survey if we wanted to gauge November?
Excellent question. So no, this survey is for 2024. So it will help us differentiate between likelihoods of success in March and November. So it is surveying voters in Burbank. It's not trying to right now zero in on only those voters for March. It's looking at the overall electorate to be able to help us, again, analyze the decision between March and November.
Whether we do March or November, and this question is probably more important for March, should it come back and say, yeah, there's enough people out there that would support it, would you be leading? Do you have community members in mind to ask to be on the committee to help? What's the next step? Are you ready? That's what I want to know. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, Superintendent Paramo and I were talking earlier today about building out that list of, again, the folks that we'd be wanting to meet over these coming months as we really seek feedback and participation before decisions are made to move forward. And as was spoken earlier in the public comment period, again, that we would, if the board is going to move forward with a March timeline, then certainly we'd be working to have a team assembled for the actual campaign itself. But right now, we're at such an early stage. It's really about, again, that stakeholder engagement to seek feedback and help inform the decision.
But if he's coming back by the next meeting, I think you need to be ready to ask those people, hey, if this comes back, are you willing? Are you ready? Can you help us? I think that list needs to be made and ready to go. Even if it's November, they're going to have to start. So, and you need answers. You need
Agreed.
help. So,
agreed.
And I think 3 people came tonight to talk about their support. So,
yeah, that was excellent.
Yes. Couple of questions. Can you sort of frame for the community, if we don't do a bond, right? If we don't continue the bond that currently exists, what do we do? What can the district sort of sustain itself? Do we have money to make the sort of large repairs that we know we already have to before we even get the final facilities master plan back?
Yeah, we do not have a funding source. The California funding model for public education is really focused on operating dollars for instruction and not focused on long-term building construction or reconstruction. And so we don't have, again, any funding mechanism right now to repair the approximately 50 or so roofs that currently leak. We have that list, and that's just the ones that actually have active leaks, separate from those those which are already at the end of their usable life, we know are going to have issues soon. For AC replacements, again, we know that it's a very high percentage of our AC units that are already beyond their usable life or will be hitting that time in the next 5 years. And so it is going to be some really challenging discussions and decisions that will need to be made for us to find revenue or to replace current expenditures or budgeted expenditures with these new ones. Again, we as a school district have roughly 85% of our budget is tied up in our people. We're a people business. And so anytime we talk about shifting expenditures from one budget area to facilities, as painful as it is, it likely means that it does affect personnel.
And speaking of that, so if we are to continue this bond, does that free up any money in the general fund that we might be able to use elsewhere?
Absolutely. So the things that we're talking about right now, again, are things that if we are replacing roofs that are failing without bond dollars, it will be coming out of the general fund.
Right.
And so that will be directly in competition with dollars that are available to fund things like staff, things like new instructional initiatives. And so those are in direct competition. Further, when we look at some of these, again, roof replacements or HVAC replacements, when you have an AC system that is as aged as ours is, it's horribly energy inefficient.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about the energy efficiencies that can come with some of these improvements, you begin freeing up. We spend about $2.3 million a year in electricity. So, if we drive that down in a material way, that also frees up, again, dollars that are part of our general fund that can be used toward educational initiatives. There are actual creative ways, creative projects that we could be thinking about that also would be, again, helping to either drive revenue through joint use agreements or help reduce our utility expenditure through things like solar, photovoltaic, or other options. So there are multiple ways in which we can have bond dollars which are restricted in their use, can only go toward facilities and technology, cannot go toward our staff.
Right.
Again, can't go toward instructional staff salaries or helping us to add the paraprofessionals into the classroom. But there are ways that we can free up operating dollars to be able to use those funds instead to support those initiatives.
Last question, and you just said it. What's helpful for me, and I think I said this in a previous meeting, is bonds are for like buildings, infrastructure, like a parcel tax or something. That is for people. So this bond is for our infrastructure, our buildings, and maintenance.
That's correct.
The last question I had is, I don't remember if it was Mr. Applebaum. I think it was him who talked about transparency in the process, and we know that we've struggled with that with previous initiatives. So I want to make sure, and I think in previous conversations, I think we all agree with this, that we are working with community partners from jump to get input, to get advice, so that we can do this together as a community, because what benefits the district benefits the city of Burbank.
Right.
So somebody, I don't know who brought this up, doesn't matter, but meeting with our city council partners to find out if they're thinking about putting something on the ballot. I don't know when we'll find out if there's going to be any kind of state bond coming down the pike and if we need to worry about that. But I think having meaningful conversations, not just with community members, but the larger community partners, is going to be integral whenever we decide to do this. And I know you're already thinking about that. And again, just to clarify, us approving the consulting contract later on is not saying we've set a specific March or November. It's just to say we want them to explore, to do the survey, and then we can make a decision about where it falls.
Not only that, it's not committing the board in any way to actually doing a bond at all.
Great.
So again, it's the next step in information gathering to help inform your decisions.
Thank you. Yes.
One thing that I think would be helpful for the public and the community in general, right, is we have a school facilities oversight committee that's responsible for the existing bond dollars.
Yes.
And one thing that would be helpful is a really easy way to walk them through how that money has been spent. Not only the fact that we, it sounds like, have not drawn down on all of it, but have left taxes actually lower than we were entitled to, but also how we've spent those dollars. So I know that on our SFOC page, there is kind of a one-pager for each school, but I was like, oh, the annual report, great. And I opened it up and I was like, oh, that's from 2021. So I don't know if there's been an annual report from the SFOC since April 2021, but I think just this idea of how are we communicating to people that we were good stewards of those initial bond funds. Here's what we spent them on. Like, there's a pretty cool chart in this annual report, but just having something that we could show to people as, you know, this bond is done. We've spent all the money, as you've said a number of times to me. We spent all the bond money. What did we spend it on, right? And how much could we have actually gone out to voters for that we didn't spend? I think that's actually like a really interesting piece from the refinance and also from taking out less.
Yeah, great points as far as the level of oversight from the community with the SFOC, really integral committee that's chaired by Justin Worsham, does an excellent job. They did approve their most recent annual report in June, and so I will make sure that we add that to the website because it appears that it has not been. It is. I will say we're only a year behind, though. Just to give a little credit to the committee and to our staff who upload things to websites. The committee is looking, although we give them updates about current projects, their actual legal requirement is to be looking at the fiscal year after it's closed. And after they receive the audit report. And so the audit report will come from our auditors for the 22-23 fiscal year. Will come to them typically in January. And so when they produce a report in June of next year, it's actually going to be backward looking at this year that's already ended in June. So it's always kind of a year behind is the way that the timing works. Although, again, their involvement is always looking at current projects. But the report, because it's tied to the audit report, is always the spring after the year closed.
That's super helpful. Yeah, I know. I was surprised that it wasn't the one that would be most recently because I feel like I was at that meeting when we approved it. So I thought there was one. So
yes,
thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Cantwell. Appreciate it.